Okay, here we are, folks. Welcome, fellow space travelers. You might notice that my background has changed. We had a number of comments. Some people liked it, some people didn't. I kind of like the outer space theme, but some people found that a little bit distracting. And I noticed that this this cabinet on one side of me kept showing up all the time. So you're gonna have to put up with my office, my den, my office, my recording studio, my photography studio, whatever else you want to call it. So welcome everybody. And for those of you who are not here in person or could not be here in person, I'm not sure whether I'm talking to you or not, but we will post a link to be able to watch this on video if you want to see it later on. All of you are muted when you come in, and that's just because there's can be a whole lot of background noise. If you decide that you have a question to ask or a comment to make, simply unmute yourself, and then you will have to yell a little bit to get past me, but that'll be fine. Ask your question, make your comment, and then we can comment on that or affirm that as we will, okay? Right now I am logged in as Valerie because she is the host of this website. And so I'm hoping that'll work okay. It's the only way I could get the ability to record this and to get everybody in here as smoothly as possible. Because if I just logged in as myself, for some reason or another, they're working on the account. I don't have the ability to figure out all the buttons and play all the bells. So here we are. So as we begin, let's take a moment. And as we do in unity all over the world, and many other spiritual paths as well, we begin, whatever it is we are doing, we begin with prayer. And very simply put, prayer is the alignment of spirit to spirit. Prayer is the alignment with the truth of who you are, whether you feel it or not. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. And as I begin my talks on Sundays, may all beings be at peace. May all beings be free of suffering. May all beings remember who they are. In the midst of all that we are going through as a city, as a state, as a country, as a race, it would be foolish to deny all of the stuff that's going on. At the same time, we are being asked to remember who we truly are. That is not a denial of what is going on planet Earth, but it is an approach that is different from getting caught up in the fear and in the panic that many, many people are experiencing, and that each one of us might be experiencing in our own ways as well. So we don't deny the things of the earth, but we also don't allow ourselves to be controlled by them. If I have fear, I have fear. I came across something in one of the earlier works by Paul Selig that I thought is very appropriate here. I hope you don't mind me skipping around a little bit. This is from the first book, I Am the Word. He says in quotations, I am the Word through those before me. It's one of the things we are encouraged to do. I am word through my fear. I am word through my doubt. Now that, to the thinking mind, to the personality self, that seems to be ridiculous, because all that seems to be doing is a way of reinforcing your fear. But that is not true, because we are coming at this or coming with this from the true self that we are. And when I say I am the word through my fear, I'm saying I have fear. I do. But that's not who I am. And when I word that, when I say I am word through my fear, I am opening myself to the possibility that that fear can be transformed. It is that simple and that profound. I open myself up to the possibility that this fear can be transformed. I don't know what it will be transformed into, neither do you right now. But that's okay. That's not part of our thinking mind's trip. I know it can be transformed. My favorite prayer from Scripture, Lord, that I may see as you see, that I may see through the eyes of the Christ. I am word through those before me. You become a witness and an active part of every situation you are in, because you are the vibration of the word and you are acting it through your intention to serve. I am word through those before me. What you do is you bring energy to everyone there. You are not depleted, because as we have told you, you are the conduit. You are the vessel that divine frequency inhabits, is, and works through. I am that I am, I am that I am, I am that I am. Christ has come again in man. This is the time, this is the time, this is the time. There probably has never been a time in our racial consciousness where we, of necessity on our spiritual path, have to live in the present moment. None of us know what's coming an hour from now or tomorrow. We have all sorts of predictions, dire as well as others. And yet none of us know what is true and what is not. Living in the present moment, that is where we are, that is who we are. There's nothing else I can do. I can live in fear, but fear is always a projection into the future. Not only a projection into the future, it's also a reflection on the past. Here I am, here you are, here we are. Think about it, at this moment in time, this number of us, this 25 or so people who are gathered together here in this one, I'm going to say in this one place because we are in this one place, sharing in this universal energy of oneness, of yearning for wholeness, of hungering for wholeness, and at the same time realizing we are there. It is that marvelous paradox of the spiritual path, being there and opening ourselves to being more. Thank you, God. We are on page 169, down at the bottom. Or as Jamie would say, what sentence are we on? What paragraph are we on? 169 towards the bottom of the page. And if there are any things that are left over from last week or other times that you need to question or take a look at more fully, please don't hesitate to unmute yourself, ask it, say it, do whatever it is you need to do with that. And hopefully I can prayerfully comment on that if I need to comment on that. You might notice that I almost have to comment on everything, but I really don't have to. This first sentence on page 169 at the bottom. Now we do not tell you that love is something that you do other than be expressed. Now that sounds rather arcane and hidden. What? What's he talking about? Very simply, the language we ordinarily use is say that I love this or I love that or that loves me back. What this is saying is you do not love, you are love. There is no distinction between you and love. And so you don't do love, you recognize that love is the truth of who you are. Do you get the difference there? See, one of them, when I do love, or I love you and I want to show that or whatever it is that's going on in my mind, then somehow or another my personality self thinks it's somehow or another in charge of that process. When I recognize I am love, the personality has to take a back seat. Because in truth, love is the expression of who I am. Love is the expression of the truth of who I am. That's it. Perfectly. It's not something I do, it's something I am. And so when I recognize that as being the truth of who I am, and by the way, even when I don't recognize it, it has to be expressed. It always is expressed. Now, because I am love, no matter whether I'm conscious or even denying that myself, it is going to be expressed somehow or another. It has to be. It cannot not be. Now, the more open I am to the truth of who I am, the wider or the greater or the more powerful that expression might be. Now, get this. Even someone who is totally locked up in their personality, totally identified with their ego in a conscious level, is still going to be the manifestation of love if I am able to pick it up. If I am able to tune into that. It's that wonderful thing from Mother Teresa again. You know, my job is to see the Christ in all his distressing disguises. Even if they cannot see, I will see the Christ in you, even though you cannot see it in yourself. Can you take that step? I will see you in wholeness. I will see you in perfection, even if you cannot see that in yourself. Can you do that? Can you allow yourself to do that one? As you are expressed as love, the requirements of love are claimed by you, and you move into accord with what is required of you at that level of expression. We decide the level of expression we are going to be love. Well, I'm going to be 95% of my personality and I'll be 5% love. That's what you get. That's what you give. That's what you show. Now, if we were to flip that around and say, you know, I'm going to be 95% love and 5% personality. In order for that to happen, in order for that to manifest, I am going to need to align myself more and more fully to the truth of who I am and not let all of the other stuff, the fear or the manipulation or the scarcity or the separation or anything like that, stop allowing that to interfere with my truth. And when I notice it is interfering with my truth, to remind myself of the truth of who I am. I am love incarnate. I am love, and so are you. We ended on this one, but it's worth repeating again. But how do you love the one who has hurt your child, who broke your heart, who burned your house down, or rendered you powerless, when all you wanted was power. You forgive them, yes, but first and foremost, you have to know who they are. And we will tell you this, like it or not, and many of you do not wish to hear this, they are as loved as you are by the divine, and they are having their expression. As long as you know that they are worthy of love, you align to the possibility that you may be in that current and you may be in that expression. Again, here we have this word possibility. The thinking mind cannot understand this. The intellect cannot understand this. The personality self cannot understand this. And so what we do is we bring the personality, we bring the thinking mind up to that place as far as it will go. And it can be open to the possibility, even though it doesn't understand that. I will be open to the possibility that I can see you as love. I will open myself to the possibility that I can be in this moment without fear. Now, that doesn't mean my fear disappears, and that doesn't mean automatically I'm in la la land in love with everyone and everything. But it does mean that I am consciously aligning myself to that truth. And as I do that, I allow that to happen. Here's another example of that. If you have any trouble getting a sense of what opening ourselves up to the possibility is like. We do this in guided imagery. We do this in prayer and in meditation quite often, is that we ask ourselves, imagine what it would be like. For instance, imagine what it would be like to be loved unconditionally. Imagine what it would be like to be unconditional love. Imagine what it would be like to love someone else unconditionally. See, we can do that. And what we are doing is truly, we are bypassing the thinking mind and opening ourselves up to the possibility of what that is like. And really, by opening ourselves up to the possibility, we are really opening ourselves up to the truth of what that is. It's not just imagination. It's not just Disneyland. It's not just making something up. The imagination is a true aspect of knowing, and it's a true aspect of knowing that goes beyond the thinking mind. And so what we are doing when we open ourselves up to the possibility, let's say the possibility of knowing myself as being loved, is we open ourselves up to the truth of that. And actually what happens, I know this sounds a little bit paradoxical, and it is somewhat, but when I open myself up to the possibility, I am also opening myself up to the truth of that, to the truth of who I am. You can try that anytime, whenever you imagine yourself. Imagine what it would be like that I could look at this lovingly. Imagine what it would be like if I could look at this other person lovingly. Imagine what it would be like if I could look at myself lovingly. As soon as we do that, we suspend the thinking mind and the talk and the monkey chatter that's going on, and we open ourselves up to a deeper truth of who we are. Now, I know for most of us, including myself, that might not last for a whole long time, because immediately the mind wants to kick in and say, well, you need to be afraid about this, or you need to be afraid about that, or this, what's going on here? What if this happens? What if that happens? That's okay. That's what the mind's going to be doing. But for that split second, that divine, holy instant is when you and I are at complete peace, because we are open up to the possibility of being in that place, of being in that space. The divine self that you are does not hold grudges. She does not want them. She knows what they incur. The master that you are in your higher knowing believes everybody to be in their worth, regardless of what they have chosen, regardless of what their trip is, regardless of what their disguise is, regardless of what their karma might be. As you align to love, I know who I am in love, what I am in love, how I serve in love. You claim them in the same way. You see, it cannot be different. You claim yourself in love, you have to claim everybody else in love as well. It's like in Buddhism, I know there's a school called the Mahayana, which is sometimes referred to as the great vessel or the big boat. And the philosophy behind it is the boat to enlightenment or the boat to heaven or nirvana, whatever you want to call it, doesn't leave until everybody's on it. And by the way, when I stretched that analogy a little bit more, I realized that you can't just say, well, you're in that cabin over there. So, you can be on this boat, but don't bother me. It doesn't work that way, because the person you are sitting next to is probably the one who is asking you for your healing the most, who is asking for your forgiveness, who is asking for your love. And they might be the most difficult one in your life to love. And so again, this is not about the personality so much. This is about your own inner knowing and your own inner being, the truth of who you are. We want you now to see one before you that you keep outside of the light, that you shut away, that you blame, that you may hate. We're going to do a meditation around this in a moment or so. I'll say that again. We want you now to see one before you that you keep outside the light, that you shut away, that you blame, that you may hate, that you may claim is the reason for your pain or suffering. Put them before you and see them as they are, an aspect of the divine seeking its own expression, divine love incarnate. And we say these words to them as we see them before us. I know who you are. I know what you are. I know how you serve. Wow, talk about a lesson, huh? Let's take a moment with that one. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, take a couple of breaths. Breathe. And for a moment or so, just let your breath take you. Don't even concentrate on your breathing. Let your breathing concentrate on you. Let your breath breathe you. And you will notice that even in the midst of all of these things and thoughts and ideas and emotions that are swirling around, that you are in the eye of the storm. Or better said, you are in the I am of the storm. And just rest there for a moment. And what we would like you to realize is that this I am of the storm and this connection with the I am of the storm is always here with you. It is not something you do. It is something that you are. And now what we are being asked to do is to notice this person, somebody perhaps we can't stand. Now, before we invite them in, because I know our personality objects to this very highly and very strongly, go back to yourself for a moment. Go back to the I amness. And imagine or feel or sense within this space that you express yourself as being love. And the way this looks, if you want to visualize this, is that you are standing in sort of a cone of light. And the apex of that cone is right above your seventh chakra, right above your head. And so it sort of comes down like this around you, and you are standing in this cone of light. And you recognize this cone of light is an expression of who you are, but actually your divine self. That is also true for all beings. And so you are not inviting this other being into your personality. You are inviting this other being into the light that you are projecting as your own truth. And you might say, come here, brother or sister. I see you beyond your disguise. I see you beyond who you think you are. And I invite you into the light. It's not my light, it is the light. I invite you into the light, even though you might not be conscious of it or aware of it yourself. I invite you into participating into the truth of who you are. And I realize that your karma might be so dense this lifetime that you might not be able to see or sense or feel or experience that on a conscious level of your being. And I am saddened by that. But I still invite you into the light and the truth of who you are. And as much as you possibly can, to simply allow yourself to be in that space. Breathe in into your being. And before we close this part of the meditation, you can begin to recognize that anyone you are holding outside of the light, anybody you are looking at as being the enemy, or anybody you are seeing or holding them in their imperfection, has very little to do with them and has much to do about you and me. And so I need to ask myself occasionally, what is it that I am afraid of? Why am I afraid of inviting so-and-so into the light? Why am I blocking my ability to see the Christ in them, to see the divine in them? What is there that is fearful in me that is so reluctant to see past their personality into the truth of who they are. And breathe that in. Take it in as best you can. Without judgment. No matter where you perceive yourself to be with that. Stretch a bit. Take a deep breath. And open your eyes when you're ready. So if there's anybody who needs to express or comment on that or share on that, please feel free to do so. You can unmute yourself and say whatever it is you need to say. And if not, we will continue for a while.
Hey, Jerry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Jim.
Okay. So as we were moving through that meditation, what I was asking myself in terms of being reluctant to bring that person or persons into the light, what came to me is that I really don't want to see that which is in them because I know that it's within me, that this isn't something that was happenstance. That part of that person that's annoying is that which that's part of me as well. So that's that reluctance just to go ahead and for me to deflect and leave them outside of the light because I don't want to address that part of me, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Thank you. There's a real poignant piece. I know people in 12-step recovery have come across this one, and that says, talks about the shadow side, that if you spot it, you got it. Now that can be a little bit dangerous because, first of all, there is certainly some resistance in each one of us to see the stuff we are still holding on to. It's not the truth of who we are, it's stuff I'm still identified with or holding on to. But at the same time, sometimes what we are holding on to is the fear that that might be true about us. So let's say I look at somebody as being an egotistical snob. And I say, well, that's my difficulty accepting that because I think that's part of who I am. Now, it might or might not be who we are or something that we are holding on to, but it might also be a fear that we might think other people might see us that way. So it's a little bit tricky. This is not about judgment or blame so much, but I think Jim hits on a very, very important point here. That one of the things that stops me from inviting you into the light is that I'm going to have to see beyond your stuff, and therefore I'm going to have to see myself beyond my stuff. And some of my stuff might get in the way. It certainly does sometimes. So I guess one of the things that Jim is getting at here is to examine our reluctance. When I say, what am I afraid of? Examine my reluctance. Somebody's on here. Let me see if I can get them. Oops. Oh, somebody said, don't you think pride holds us back so often, whether we see it or not? Pride essentially, if we were to put it in the context of this work, Pride essentially is holding on to my personality self as being more of the truth of who I am rather than my divine consciousness. Take that in for a moment. Pride essentially is holding on to my identification with my personality self. Now, it doesn't mean that when I'm in a better state of mind that my personality disappears. It just means that I'm not attached to that. I recognize that as being, that's my spacesuit, or that's the clothes I am wearing. That's my uniform. So even though today I don't have the uniform of a hippie, to put that in a context of, I still am. So, you know, my hair might not be very long, and my beard might not be very long, and I might have put away my tie-dyed stuff in my bell-bottom jeans. But as I like to tell people, I was born in the 40s, I was raised in the 50s, but I'll always be a child of the 60s. I might not appear that way. My uniform might be a little bit more either conservative or not. But that aspect of self, the peace and love and the connection to that particular philosophy is still very much here. What am I holding on to? I came across something that I'd like to share with you. I hope you don't mind this morning. It's not really off the subject, but the book doesn't mention too much about this, but I think it's tremendously important. As we are examining ourselves and our identification, let's say with our personality self, and as we let go of some of that, or maybe a lot of that, and especially in the world we are in today, as we are processing all of our emotions and our way of reacting and responding to people, places, and things. For me anyway, and this might not be true for you, but I found this passage in another book tremendously poignant because I experienced a tremendous amount of sadness. It is sadness for what's going on in the world right now. It's sadness for those who can't see themselves as the truth of who they are. It's sadness in just the general overall grieving that is happening here on planet Earth. And my tendency sometimes is to either negate that or push that away, or pretend that it's not there, or make it into simply an emotional state, when I think it's more than that for many of us. For many of us, I think it's actually part of our spiritual path. And so this is a reading from the Buddhist teacher Chögyam Trungpa. He said, tenderness, he wrote, contains an element of sadness. Tenderness or compassion might be another word for that. It is not the sadness of feeling sorry for yourself or of feeling deprived, but it is a natural situation of fullness. Get this. You feel so full and rich, as if you were about to shed tears. In order to be a good warrior, one has to feel this sad and tender heart. If a person does not feel alone and sad, he cannot be a warrior at all. The warrior is sensitive to every aspect of phenomenon, sight, smell, sound, feelings. Sadness in this context is not opposed of happiness. The opposite of happiness is a closed heart. Happiness is a heart so soft and so expansive that it can hold all of the emotions in a cradle of openness. A happy heart is one that is larger at all times than any one emotion. An open heart feels everything, including anger, grief, and pain, and absorbs into it a bigger and wiser experience of reality. Joseph Campbell calls happiness the joyful participation in the sorrows of the world. Wow, do you get that? A joyful participation in the sorrows of the world. And so this is not an avoidance, nor condemning stuff or putting stuff into just the context of human emotions. There are feelings, or there are, let's go beyond that word feeling, because that usually is equated with emotions. There are expressions within us that go beyond our emotional state, that actually help us touch our spiritual nature even more. And as this reading said, tenderness or compassion is one of those. And so when I open myself up in compassion or to compassion, it is not surprising that sometimes sadness will be there. And again, it's not the sadness of feeling sorry for myself or somebody else. What you will notice with the sadness that enters into your life or my life with an open or a tender or a compassionate heart is that you will get a sense that it is bigger than you are. In other words, in some ways, it is beyond definition. It will go beyond your definition. You will feel sadness. Yes, you will experience that in your heart, not just your physical heart, but your emotional heart as well. I mean, your spiritual heart as well. But if you try to define it, where is that coming from? You will realize that it's coming from a place that is wider or bigger than your sense of self. And one of our jobs, part of our job, is to let ourselves experience that. It might be experienced through tears. Sometimes you might be on the verge of tears and laughter at the same time, and you might not be able to define either one. And that's okay too. It's part of our work here. So I'm wondering if we could say this also to ourselves. I know who I am. I know what I am. I know how I serve. And right now you might be asking yourself, well, how am I serving? You are serving by being a conduit of knowing, a conduit of healing, a conduit of self-realization, a conduit of the truth of who you are. That's how you do it. You're doing that, you're doing this in truth. You don't have to put on your doctor's uniform or your nurse's uniform. You are doing this in the truth of who you are. And the truth of who you are is going to be expressed no matter what it is you might be doing in the outside world. As the book continues, and as you witness them as they truly are, an aspect of God bound in their fear or in their choice to behave in one way or another, you begin to relinquish the fear that you have held. Fear of whatever I might realize within myself, but fear also of letting you in my light, the light. Once the fear is relinquished, doesn't mean it disappears, but once I have let go of the power of that fear for myself, once the fear is relinquished, the action of divine will come through to regulate the aspect of who that wishes to blame, seeks to return to what you have known, seeks to condemn. So when you find yourself falling back into that old way of thinking, the action of the divine self comes through. It's interesting. It says it regulates that aspect of you that wishes to blame, that seeks to return to what you have known, that seeks to condemn. It doesn't mean that those things disappear or get erased. But when I become aware a little bit more, maybe a lot more, of the truth of who I am, that allows me to go beyond my holding you in that dark place. I had written a song a while back. It was called Hold the Light. And one of the lines in that song was, when you keep your brother in the dark, how can you expect to see the light? Because you can't. And again, please realize that when I'm talking about grieving here, I'm not talking about personal grieving. I'm talking about sometime, this is what occurred to me one time ago when I was in tears and grieving. I realized that my grief was beyond my personality self, and I realized that I was shedding my tears for those who could not grieve for themselves. I was crying for those who could not cry. I was grieving for those who were blocked in their own sense of limitation of who they are, or the ones who were looking at grieving as just being part of their personality. Grieving is a natural part of course, we're talking about letting go here of whenever I let go of something, I grieve, no matter what it is. Even if, one of the things I found out is, even if I'm letting go of something that I want to let go of, I still grieve on some level of my being. I'm not letting grieving be my truth. I'm just letting it be an expression of what's going on with me right now. And I let it go. I let it pass through me. I let my grief pass through me. And even when it's passing through me, it doesn't have to be a block to my divine consciousness. I recall I was doing a retreat with Margot a number of years ago, and I remember a lady who I knew quite well came up to me and said, you know, Jerry, being in prayer and being in meditation was such a wonderful consolation to me in the past. I always felt not just warm and fuzzy, but I felt really, really connected. And she said, now I don't experience that connection at all. It feels very dry, it feels very barren, it feels very empty. And I knew exactly what she was saying, and yet I didn't want to respond from my thinking mind so much. And so I took a short moment or so to pray that I'd be open to my divine self to give her an answer or some information that might really resonate with the truth of her being. And I remember the words that came to me was, sometimes the longing for God is the presence of God. And when I said that, we both broke into tears and hugged one another. And I could not say whether those were tears of sadness or tears of joy, and whether or not that really matters a whole lot. Both of us at that moment were not in our personality selves. Both of us in that moment were an expression of the divine, the truth of who we are. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Let me just finish that paragraph. The aspect of you that is witnessing the aspect of the divine in them is the aspect of you coming into manifestation as you attend to our words. We'll talk more about the witness consciousness in our reflections in the class as I send them out to you in the next couple of days or so. And we'll talk about this some more next week. It might be something you might want to look into. We are only asking you this. This is so beautiful. Forgive yourself for the need to punish another to feel that you are safe, to feel that you are right. Forgive yourself for the need to be expressed in rage or condemnation so you may greet the one before you in love. Remember my favorite bumper sticker? If you're not outraged, you're not paying attention. And then I had to ask myself, where's my outrage getting me? Am I willing to let go of my outrage of being right? As we close this morning, I could go on here for another couple of hours, but I know Valerie needs to use this program for church. So maybe we can set something up like this some other time if you want to. Let's just take a breath, breathe, close your eyes if you want to. And as we say Unity's prayer of light together, let's go beyond the words. The light of God surrounds us, all beings. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. And all is well. May all beings be at peace. May all beings be free of suffering. And may all beings remember who they are. Stretch a bit, take a breath, open your eyes. Please send your donations, your contributions to Unity of Louisville. Put on the check, Book of Knowing and Worth, and it will support this particular piece of ministry. So I thank you all for being here with us. This is a tremendous gift to me, even though I miss your physical presence.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yes, Joe. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you all. God bless. Stay safe, stay well, stay in the truth of who you are.
Bless you. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you all.